Hi everybody. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a couple different types of text wrapped in images. One will look like the image is kind of interleaved with the text like this, and then another will look like the text is just the text alone is wrapped in the image, like this one or like this one. And both of these use a couple of different masking techniques. So we'll use, just like the past couple activities, this one will use layer masks. And then the next one will, this one will use something called a clipping mask, which works a little bit differently from a layer mask. So I'll show you the interleaved one with the flowers first. This will work just as well with kind of anything that you can weave through the text. So something like leaves or grass or clouds or flames. But I'm going to give you this flower image. So if you want to just use the easiest, an easy image to work with, I know that this one's not too difficult to work with. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to remove the background. And you've removed plenty of backgrounds from things. But just for the sake of practicing using layer masks, I'm going to ask you to use layer masks to do this. There are other techniques you could use, but kind of the whole point is to practice using layer masks. And I try to just get like mostly the flowers by themselves. It's okay if you get a little bit of stems or other pieces of the plant, but really you just kind of want the flowers so that the flowers can just be kind of standing out, and then they'll be interwoven with text when you're done. And I'm moving pretty fast. Try to be really careful when you're making this these selections. Well, I mean, I guess you don't have to be that careful. You could always, because we're using layer masks, you can always go back and edit your mask. So all I'm going to do when I'm done with this is I'm just going to, after I make that selection, I'm going to click the layer mask, add raster mask button. And then if there's anything that I need to clean up, I can just take a black brush with the mask active, which it is, it's highlighted here, and just remove any extra pieces of background. And I'm not gonna be too picky because I don't want to take up too much time in the video here, but you could go through and you could remove all the little finer details here. I'm just going to kind of move on for the sake of speeding up the video. I'm going to go to my background and fill that with the paint bucket. Just fill the background with black. And then I'm also going to make a copy of this flower layer. Right click, duplicate. So one's going to be a foreground version of the flowers and one will be a background version of the flowers. And what I'll do is, the flowers are mostly going to be behind the text, but every once in a while, if we're in spots where I want the flowers to overlap with the text, I can pull the flowers forward. So I'm actually going to click on the mask here for the foreground, the top layer with the flowers, and I'm going to completely black that out as well. So I'm actually going to, because this mask is here, I'll just fill it in with black. Just completely black out that mask. So right now the flowers are completely in the background. When I put the text, what I'll do is I'll choose I think it'll look good with a serif font. Let's see, what font did I liked the one that I picked before. Find the one that I picked before, which was Cormorant. I'm gonna go back to find Cormorant. So yeah, I think it looks good with serif fonts, but you can experiment with different fonts if you want. And the font size should be pretty large. And the font should be white. And I'm just going to line this up in what I think should be a good place to sort of have it interacting with pieces of the flowers. Right sort of in the middle should be good. And then I'm going to pull this layer with the blacked out mask to the top. So it's not going to affect it yet. So what's happening is the background is all black. This layer, which I'll call background flowers, has the entire background of its image removed, but the flowers are showing. And that's the version of the flowers that's behind the text. The text is just the text, and this will be foreground flowers. And what I'll do is I'll paint white anywhere in the foreground flowers where I want the flowers to show. So what that'll look like is I'll activate the mask here, get a brush, make sure it's white. It's going to have to be a lot smaller. And any place I want the flowers to cover up the text, I'm going to fill in white so that the flowers show up. So a good example of where that might happen could be somewhere like, maybe like right here. Maybe like this petal could be sticking out and covering up some of the text. I could do that again. Maybe right here. I mean, if you want, you can cover up a bit more of the text. You can cover up a bit less of the text. You do sort of lose readability when you're covering text up, but it kind of looks cool. So it kind of looks like, right? It kind of looks like the text is interwoven with the flowers here. And that's all really. And as you can see, it just kind of looks like the text and the flowers are woven together. Sometimes the text is in front of the flowers, sometimes it's behind the flowers, kind of as if they're just really close together and bits of the flowers are covering up bits of the text. So that's all there is to that one. It's really just some carefully placed masking. And so the next one, the next image is going to be using a different technique that we haven't used yet to create something that looks kind of like this, where the image is actually built into the text and it's got a sort of 3D look. So I'm going to create a new project. I'll just make it something sort of banner shaped, rectangular. And I'm going to type some text with a like bold font. Like I've got this font here. It's just like with a postcard. If you're gonna have some sort of image embedded into the text, you're gonna want it to be a pretty bold text, because if it's not, you won't be able to see the image. So choose a font, choose a size that's pretty large enough to take up most of the canvas, and set your color to gray, like just sort of 50-50, like black, between black and white. And add some text. And then what you'll do is right click on the layer, the text layer, and in blending options, set it up to look kind of 3D. So first thing you'll need to add is bevel and emboss. And so if you just emboss by itself, kind of makes it look 3D, but it has like a drop shadow behind it, which when we're done with this will make it look kind of weird, like it's floating. So instead, let's go with inner bevel. You can see with inner bevel, it doesn't really have the drop shadow behind it. It'll look a little bit better in the end. You'll have to, kind of depending on the size that you chose, you're gonna have to, you might have to mess with the settings a little bit. So right now, this kind of looks exactly the way I want it. It looks just kind of like a three-dimensional text that's kind of raised up. So I have this set to inner bevel, smooth. The depth is turned way up, 12 pixels, size. You can see, you can copy my settings and see if that works for you. You might just need to kind of change things up a little bit until it makes a little more sense and looks right. You can also try adding a little bit of inner shadow and see if that has an effect. Sometimes inner shadow and inner glow as well can sort of make the lighting look a little more realistic for something that's three-dimensional. It kind of varies depending on what you're trying to do. And again, it's something that you can just try adding to see if it looks a little more realistic. You can sort of try on off. It's a little bit darker now. I don't know if it necessarily looks more realistic. Kind of same with inner glow. If you think it helps your image look like there's light hitting it in a more realistic way, you can add that. I'm actually not going to. I kind of like the way it is just with the inner bevel. So I'm going to leave it. And next thing I'm going to add is the text that I want to, or sorry, the image that I want to be kind of wrapped around this text. And I kind of want it to be kind of like it's made of wood. So I'll find a picture of some wooden boards, copy it, paste it here. And then what I'm going to do with this is right click on my top layer, the one with the wooden boards, and I'm going to click clipping mask. And you can see it now kind of looks like this sort of three-dimensional wooden board shape. And you could do this with kind of like any image too. I mean, it works really well with sort of textures and just sort of groups, just just graphic designs that are a bit simpler than this, it might even look better if it was something a little bit less busy. Let me try, for example, let me just see. Just something with like stripes. And so because sometimes if it's simpler, it can actually turn out looking even better. I think this simple design looks better than the more complex one. So anyway, that's all there is really. If you wanted to use this in a design, you could remove the background, just hide the background, and now it's you could like export it as a transparent PNG, and you'd have a sort of three-dimensional looking image wrapped text that you could superimpose on something else.